Good Friday morning, the last day of July, July 31. Greetings and welcome to my daily reflection. So yesterday I shared with you about my Apollo 11 and the lunar landing experience. Well, yesterday morning, another piece of history touched my family. For those of you who follow this stuff, the Mars 2020 Perseverance launched at 4:50 a.m. California time. The rocket will land on Mars in February 2021, that's 7 months away, and it carries with it another Mars rover. Now here's the connection with my family. My rocket scientist daughter-in-law, Bryn, was a project manager for part of the rover. She texted me a picture of she and Campbell wearing their Mars 2020 t-shirts yesterday as we celebrated a successful launch. We'll obviously wait for February of next year and anticipate a safe landing, and I'm waiting to see what she tells me about her Mars rover and what Campbell tells me about his mama's Mars rover. She is grateful and proud, rightly so, of her team's accomplishment, and I'm proud of her accomplishment as a project manager on that work. Back when I was serving at St. Timothy's Lutheran Church in Omaha in the late 80s, I became friends with a man by the name of Steve. Steve was a member of St. Tim's, but he also worked for Mutual of Omaha Insurance. He was in their tech department. And one day, as he was showing me the studio and all of the tech stuff that he does, he asked if he could ask me a weird question. I said, sure, go right ahead. He hesitated, thought for a moment, and then asked, do you believe there is life in outer space? You know, aliens. I told him, hey, I grew up watching Star Trek and its mission to explore strange new worlds. Not so much a fan of Lost in Space, but also I'd seen all 3 of the Star Wars movies to date. So yes, I said, I think there might be life on other planets, in other galaxies. We don't know, and I hope we'll find out sometime. He was relieved. But then he asked, how did my faith allow that science fiction to not be challenged? I told him that faith and science were not exclusive. I could and I do believe in God, and I can and do accept science, and even science fiction. After all, science fiction is just that, fiction. But every once in a while, I think of that alien conversation with Steve. And I wonder how many others reject the idea because their faith understanding will not allow it. I know that for Steve, it was the first time he'd had a pastor share that same wonder. So I'm in the midst of a science and faith dialogue, as you can tell. Perhaps because we as a country are also there. There are strong voices saying that science is just an opinion, and we should dismiss it because it attempts to undermine Christianity. I strongly disagree. Science is more than just an opinion. Science comes to conclusions, generally understood as facts. Now, to be sure, there is a process of evolution in some scientific facts as new data emerges, and scientists make new discoveries and change words and opinions and come up with a new statement. I see danger when we dismiss science and ignore what science has given us. Medical science has made some incredible changes in how we live. Artificial joints. Who doesn't have a new knee or a hip? Or someone in their family who has at least one of those? Transplants. We have kidneys and hearts and livers and cornea transplant patients in our congregation. Vaccines of all sorts, chickenpox, shingles, mumps, measles, seasonal flu, pneumonia. When I started in ministry back in 1981, one of my parishioners that year had cataract surgery, and then spent the next week, I think, in the hospital, lying flat on her bed with sandbags at her head so that she couldn't move. What a change now. Cataract surgery almost seems like it's outpatient surgery. We've made such progress and such strides. Science does that. Science isn't undermining Christianity and faith in God. No, I am more convinced that God has given us a brain to explore and to learn. Science is just another one of those highly organized ways to use your brain to make new discoveries. Undermine faith? Nah. Perhaps quite the opposite. Some of the scientists I know marvel at how their discoveries demonstrate the majestic way matter connects, and how could that possibly have happened if not for some unknown entity? The entity they, you, and I call God. I do know other scientists who seem to move away from faith. But as I've chatted with some of them, it isn't just because science and faith don't connect up. There are other deeper reasons. That's a different reflection time. I also remember reading about Thomas Alvin Edison when I was a kid. I had to go back and refresh my memory because, I'm older and I don't remember every detail. But I learned again that he had some 10,000 failures as he tried to develop the light bulb. However, he would never refer to them as a failure. He rather said that they were 10,000 learning experiences. Perhaps we ought to have the same understanding, that it's never a failure, it's a learning experience. We try something new. I wonder, however, if Edison began his journey on a light bulb experiment with the understanding that I don't know how this is going to work, because that's sometimes the way I look at faith. I don't know how it is that God does this. But science and faith don't compete with one another. Yes, science can become a god, and it has for some, but so too can politics, leisure, money, comfort, my new car, travel, my favorite team, my freedom to do whatever I want. Science and faith, for me, are two sides of the same coin. They're complementary. They cover different areas of life. Remember that story of creation, those stories of creation in Genesis? It's not science. No, it's about God. It's about our relationship with God. How human sin is our responsibility. It's about our role to care for God's creation. It's not science in that fashion. Science tells me how creation works, how two hydrogen and one oxygen molecule come together and it becomes water. Faith tells us who, and so what do we do with it? Science tells us how. While both science and faith begin with questions, science really doesn't talk about the meaning of life. It's not its job. It dissects, studies, probes, works to understand the biological paths of life. Faith, that questions the meaning of life. Remember Thomas? Until I see, I doubt. Until I understand, I doubt. But faith also looks beyond what we see. Faith has an understanding of something more, something extra. For us, it's called heaven. Faith tells us that we have a Creator who loves us and cares for us and all others unconditionally. Science can't do that. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's another side of a coin. For the faithful person, both science and faith are necessary tools as we navigate this physical and spiritual life. So you've noticed on Sundays we're now praying for scientists who are working to develop a vaccine, as well as faithful people living in relationship with God. Maybe they're the same people. Maybe they're not. Sometimes it is the same person. This encourages even the most faithful of us to have faith in science as well as God. I am sure that my science and faith dialogue will continue for years to come, hopefully decades. And I'm not sure that I'll ever have a full answer until that moment that God says, come home. But that's for a much longer conversation with people. Right now, I just remind you that it's Friday. I'll see you next month. That's right. Sunday is August 2nd. And I'll see you in worship. Well, at least FaceTime with you, Facebook with you. But until we gather again, whenever that might be, whenever science allows us to find the cure for this corona COVID-19 pandemic, please, please, please practice good science. Wash your hands 20 seconds at a time, a couple of times a day. Wear your mask when you go out in public. I'll be wearing mine this afternoon. We're going to go down and see and work some with Bryn and Alex. And then they're taking us to their pool, open for small groups. I'll be wearing a mask. They'll be swimming. What life we live. But wear that mask, please. When you're with your family and close associates, I guess you can gather together. But the rest of the time, please, physical distance. Be safe for one another. Don't share a disease. Love one another, that's most important. Accepting and understanding and working on that. And of course, as Sergeant Esterhaus says, be careful out there.